After studying hundreds of documented billionaire behaviors, there's a pattern that almost never gets talked about in public. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people think wealth at that level comes from intelligence, hustle, or luck. That's the surface story. The real story sits underneath, and it explains why two people can work the same hours, have the same education, live in the same city, and end up in completely different financial realities 10 years later. What I'm about to share isn't motivational, it's observational. It's what shows up again and again when you study how people at the very top actually think, decide, and move, especially in American and Canadian business culture where pressure, competition, and risk are constant. And fair warning, some of this might feel uncomfortable because it challenges ideas we've been taught since school. One thing that becomes clear fast is that billionaires don't optimize for being right, they optimize for being positioned. Most people are obsessed with making the correct decision. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want to avoid mistakes because mistakes feel expensive when you're paying rent, juggling a mortgage, or worried about layoffs. At the billionaire level, the mindset flips. Being positioned is everything. They care less about predicting the future and more about putting themselves in situations where the upside is asymmetric. If they're wrong, it costs them some money or reputation. If they're right, it changes the entire trajectory. That's why you see them enter industries that look chaotic, controversial, or premature. From the outside, it looks reckless. From the inside, it's calculated exposure. Most people wait for clarity. Billionaires move while things are still unclear, because uncertainty is where leverage lives. Another thing most people don't realize is that billionaires treat time very differently than high earners. High earners still trade time for money, just at a higher rate. A lawyer billing $400 an hour is still selling hours. A surgeon making $700,000 a year is still constrained by a calendar. Billionaires stop thinking in hours entirely. They think in decision windows. They'll spend weeks avoiding a decision, then make one phone call that changes everything. That's why their schedules look deceptively empty on paper. It's not that they're relaxed. It's that they're protecting cognitive bandwidth. When your income depends on decisions instead of effort, exhaustion becomes a liability. This is why they guard their mornings, limit meetings, and cut conversations short without apology. It's not arrogance, it's survival at scale. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, you'll probably enjoy the kind of discussions we have here. This is exactly why the Boardroom Files exists. If you want more breakdowns like this, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. It helps the channel, but more importantly, it trains the algorithm to show you content that actually sharpens how you think about money and power. A third behavior that shows up constantly is how billionaires relate to money emotionally. For most people, money is emotional oxygen. It represents safety, validation, and freedom. Losing it feels like suffocating. For billionaires, money is abstract. It's a scoreboard, a tool, a unit of measurement. That emotional distance changes everything. It allows them to take hits without spiraling, to walk away from deals without regret, and to invest during moments when everyone else is panicking. Think about how many people froze during layoffs, market drops, or inflation spikes. Meanwhile, capital quietly moved, not because those at the top didn't feel fear, but because fear didn't get a vote. Emotional neutrality around money is a massive competitive advantage, and it's one most people never develop because they're too busy trying to protect every dollar. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Billionaires don't chase opportunity, they filter it aggressively. By the time something reaches their desk, it's already been stripped down to a few key variables. Everyone else is drowning in options. Side hustles, crypto, real estate, online businesses, consulting, content creation. It feels empowering, but it's actually paralyzing. Billionaires are ruthless about subtraction. They don't ask, is this a good opportunity? They ask, is this one of the very few things worth my attention right now? If the answer isn't a clear yes, it's a no. This is why they seem calm while everyone else feels overwhelmed. They've accepted that missing out is the price of focus. Another pattern that keeps repeating is how they think about reputation. Most people try to protect their reputation by avoiding controversy. Billionaires understand that reputation is directional, not universal. They don't need to be liked by everyone. They need to be trusted by the right people. That's a huge difference. This is why you'll see them make moves that confuse or even upset the public while strengthening their standing with investors, partners, or regulators. They understand that credibility compounds in closed rooms, not comment sections. In North America, especially, where public opinion can swing overnight, this ability to tolerate being misunderstood is critical. Most careers stall not because of lack of skill, but because people are optimizing for approval instead of alignment. Now here's one of the most important things I learned, and it's rarely said out loud. Billionaires are extremely realistic about human behavior. They don't expect people to change. They design systems that work with incentives as they are, not as they should be. While everyone else complains about lazy employees, greedy corporations, or broken systems, billionaires quietly position themselves within those realities. They assume inefficiency. They assume self-interest. They assume mistakes. And because of that, they're rarely surprised. This isn't cynicism. It's clarity. When you stop expecting the world to be fair or rational, you start making decisions that actually work. This ties into another subtle behavior. They don't romanticize hard work. They respect it, but they don't worship it. In American culture, especially, we're taught that working harder is always the answer. Billionaires know that effort without leverage just leads to burnout. They look for force multipliers: capital, technology, distribution, policy, timing. This is why they're obsessed with scale. One move that affects 1 million people is worth more than 1,000 perfect executions in isolation. That's also why so many of them step away from day-to-day operations once something is working. Control feels safe, but it caps growth. Something else most people don't realize is that billionaires are constantly running downside scenarios in their heads. Not in a paranoid way, but in a disciplined way. They ask, what's the worst case if this fails? If the answer is survivable, they proceed. If it's catastrophic, they redesign the move. This is why they seem bold but rarely reckless. Risk is not about bravado. It's about understanding consequences. Most people either avoid risk entirely or jump in without a parachute. Billionaires build the parachute first. There's also a very specific way they think about learning. They don't consume information to feel informed. They consume it to make decisions. That's why they'll read one memo and ignore 10 books. They value insight over volume. Meanwhile, most people are stuck in consumption loops, watching videos, reading threads, saving articles, but never converting information into action. Knowledge without application feels productive, but it doesn't move the needle. Billionaires are allergic to that kind of mental clutter. As you move closer to the end of this, here's the part that hits hardest for a lot of people. Billionaires don't wait to feel ready, they wait to be convinced. There's a difference. Ready implies comfort. Conviction implies clarity. Comfort is rare at high levels because the stakes are always shifting. So they move forward with incomplete information, trusting their process more than their emotions. This is why they can act while others hesitate, not because they're fearless, but because they've rehearsed uncertainty. And finally, one of the most consistent behaviors I saw is that billionaires think in decades, not quarters. While public companies obsess over earnings calls and individuals obsess over monthly bills, billionaires zoom out. They're planting seeds knowing they won't harvest for years. This long-term orientation allows them to stay calm during short-term pain. It's also why they can endure criticism, slow starts, or temporary losses. When your time horizon is longer, volatility becomes noise instead of threat. If any of this sparked something for you, I want to hear it. Drop a comment about which idea hit closest to home, or where you've seen these patterns play out in your own career or business. And if you know someone who's stuck working harder without seeing results, share this with them. Sometimes the shift that changes everything isn't about doing more. It's about seeing differently.